The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Thomas Telving, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Thomas, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy you're here with me today, and thank you so much for joining me here in Copenhagen in Tuborghavn.
Thanks Lasse, thanks for the invitation.
I decided actually for this conversation also because you're a philosopher with a very broad background and exposure, and also in business and strategy and everything. You advise a lot of companies. I decided to do a different kind of structure to this. So I've sort of organized 4 questions for you that are very, overarching. One is, what is the dream of AI? What is the violence of AI? What is the benefits of AI? What is the danger of AI? And I thought we could go through them in that order, and just have an open discussion around them, right?
Sounds super.
And the cool thing is also when I ask you about the benefits, I'll try to say, do not get into the dangers then, right? So, which is sometimes a difficulty for philosophers, I know.
That's very hard for me, but I will do my best. Let's see how it goes.
I actually once did an episode where I said, okay, let's talk about, I know you're very critical, so let's only talk about what is a good thing, because that will also mirror some of the bad things that you're saying, probably.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, what is the dream of AI? Why is humanity and civilization dreaming of AI?
Well, yeah, I was going to answer that. First of all, I don't believe in dreams of AI. I don't believe that androids dream about electric sheep. But that's not what you mean. You think about something else, and well.
Now I get it. No, I don't. Okay, now I get it. No, not the electric.
Yeah, okay. Well, it depends who you ask, of course, because when you ask that question in Silicon Valley, you always get this dream coming from Sam Altman and Daria Amodei and Elon Musk and all those guys that they dream about AGI, the artificial general intelligence, and AI that it can do anything for us. Think, dream, everything, and not really leaving anything to the human, and I think that is a poor dream, and it rests on a very narrow understanding of what it is like to be a human being. Because what would it be like if we had machines being able to do everything for us? Well, that would make us completely free of any obligation. But what does it mean to be free of obligation? Well, that actually means that nobody really needs you. So what would that be like in the morning? I can get up and do something because someone would miss me if I was not there, or I can just don't because AI is doing all the work. So I think that their dream would become a nightmare, really, because we need to be relevant in society. But
isn't that been what we've been doing all the time, right? With every other species and even on human species. I always think that that's an interesting fact in this. I haven't discussed this on an episode yet. That we've had other human species, like Homo erectus and Homo Neanderthalis and all that, and we sort of eradicated them. We excluded them and eradicated them, right?
Yes, that's right.
Which we sort of tend to forget. that we had another intelligence almost like our own, and we sort of got rid of them. And now we have something else, and now we are talking about getting rid of ourselves. We're excluding the Homo sapiens.
Oh. Well. I mean, in a context of work, because that's the primary objective after all. Well, then the aim seems to be to exclude ourselves from that sphere and say we don't have to do it anymore because machines will do it for us. AI and robotics in this mixture, all kinds of automation. And I mean, to some degree, I share that dream, dangerous work that we do not have enough human workforce to do fine if we have machinery to help us. But my dream, if I can point towards what I would see as a positive scenario, would be that so if we succeed on certain parameters to make human work not needed anymore, what will be the new scarcity then? What will arise as something that that is scarce enough that we would like to pay for it? Could that be something else? And yes, it could be. It could be the thing of being a human being, like what you would today call soft work, or
that is also, then there's a hope that there's something that's a human without all the other stuff, right? Soft work is maybe exactly valuable because it's in opposition to hard work.
Yeah, but you have kids,
yes,
and I have kids, right? My kids are big now, but when they were like 5 years old or 3 years old, and I had to deliver them in the morning in daycare, the most important person in my life at that moment, apart maybe from the kids, that would be the person receiving them and taking care of them in that particular function, right? Often a woman, often not very well paid, but nevertheless the most important work in my life is what she is doing right now. And my hope, my dream would be actually that in a world of widespread automation in all kinds of other work would make us put that work in a place where it belongs as something that is worth valuing more. So that would be a dream for me, that all this work that is not really valued, at least not financially. Nurses and personnel in daycare and all this, we call it warm hands in Danish political discussions.
We could call it relational work.
Relational work.
It's sort of interpersonal.
Yeah, that was perhaps the term I was looking for.
Yeah.
And you have seen economists speculate that this is the way things are going. The American economist Alex Emas has talked about what will be the new scarcity, and he points to, well, not like daycare or nurses just in a narrow sense, but everything that would be a sort of relational work, that maybe this will be the new scarcity. And if the money follows, and we can, and society can afford doing that instead of all kinds of other stuff, well, then I would see that as a good dream.
But maybe you're saying that it will not be a new scarcity, but it will be the new abundance. Because right now it's a scarcity because you spend time on so much else. Because I think, in a way, what I thought about was, entertainment is already this kind of, non-productive or,
Yeah, that's right.
And that's been, as we've automated stuff, that's become more abundant. Everything is entertaining. No matter where you go, you're entertained.
Yeah.
Your phone, everyone's creating it. Everyone's creating entertainment. We are now maybe also right now creating entertainment.
We are creating a sort of entertainment.
Yes.
We're in that business as well. And
are you not entertained?
It's turn it off.
You're not.
And it's free.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be a good thing if we valued human work more. I've been working as a consultant for many years, and it's been a good living, and I've been making good money on it. But sometimes I have a friend. He works in the Danish psychiatric system. It's a very tough job. He is a weekly witness to suicides and all kinds of really bad stuff for him, and he gets an okay pay, but it is much easier for me to make good money doing consultancy work than it is for him doing this really hard human work that I think can only be done by another human, because this is human beings needing help in a way that is hard for any of us to imagine. And I think that if I mean, all the consultancy work for one thing that I do, so I'm not aiming at anybody but myself. I mean, it would be fine by me if we spent less money as a society on that and more money on my friend doing the tough work with other people.
You're basically saying that what you're doing is, is dispensable, and what he's doing is indispensable and should be paid better.
That is actually what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yes.
Isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And you're just creating entertainment with me right now, right? As well.
Yeah.
But also, the whole figuring out. What you're saying is actually defining what is then important, what is valuable. That's the second part of what you're actually saying here, right? But that's typically what we try to avoid saying. I think most of the Silicon Valley evangelists are avoiding that, just saying that AI is going to be great, but they don't really define what is then the valuable, what is it we want more of.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah, why are we doing this?
What's the aim of everything?
Yeah.
And I think it's known to most that we talk a lot about money, we talk about gross national product, we talk about all these things, and so sometimes it's like the goal sort of like it vanishes somewhere. We sort of missed it. We don't. Where are we actually going?
Money is just a potentiality, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you want to do with the money?
Exactly. That's the interesting question,
yeah,
and that is sort of what I'm aiming at here. So if AI and automation, in a general sense, can make more people discuss this, what is all this actually for? What are we doing here? What value are we really creating? Not financial value, but human value. Then that would be at least a part of a dream. Then would do something good, and I think it's done that already. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a philosopher by education, and I can make a living out of discussing philosophy with people. I couldn't do that before AI. So it and I know more. It's not only
in Greece, in small quarters, but
yeah, but and it's not only me. It's I know quite a few people doing that. So more people are willing to talk about these things, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's become more room for it as well, right? I think that the discussion is not just I always think that so when we think about taking away all the hard work or the boring work or the problem, this is also something that's creating as I said before, a juxtaposition to artwork and everything. I actually like that you didn't say artwork and poetry, and because I've read books saying that as well, that's what we could do more of, because I think that those things only exist again as a sort of as a juxtaposition to the opposite, to hard work, right?
Yeah.
And if the hard work doesn't exist, then the value of art sort of, you don't need entertainment. If you're entertained all the time, you don't need to read a lot of books about royalty and harems to figure out that that's not the good life either, right?
No, I guess that's true. Yeah.
To do the hard work with each other. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that right now we are not necessarily headed in a good direction, but I can see discussions taking place, and I can see these things taking up more space, and I think that is a good thing. And I think that someone like me, who is actually working or have been working a lot as a consultant in very commercial lines of business, I can say something like this. What's actually the purpose of all this, without being like put off, like, or he's just a left-wing softy. It's not that. No. It just makes sense to say, what's really the purpose? Why are we doing all this? Why are we destroying?
Yeah, that's right. Because people are, so you open up that discussion because suddenly people are all there talking about everything else will be automated. So then everyone has to discuss what do we want then, and also just discuss what will the consumer want to buy in a moment.
Yeah,
who will the consumer be? There's a lot of things going on here, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and Yeah, I read this article by Alex Emas, who speculated about this, what would be the new scarcity, and he pointed to relational work, and he said as a case story that you could also already see some companies going in that direction, and he mentioned Starbucks, the coffee company. After a long period of like making processes more efficient and making things go faster, they could see that people actually wanted people in their coffee shops. So they actually appreciated the human touch and are willing to pay for that human touch. So that's just a small
to an
instance.
extent, right? Because I've talked about on the podcast before about the McDonald's scenario where they tried to put AI into their drive-thrus, and people were like quite okay with AI producing the burgers if that was what they were doing, but they wanted a person.
Yeah.
To talk to when they order the burger that they always order. Because, they're just like, I don't know what I want.
That's another good example of that. Yeah. That there may be a line that can be crossed where we would say, no, well, actually...
That's why it's so weird that you see all these things that AI can produce. We say, you give this entire task to AI and it does it all. Great, perfect, looks nice, great demo. But the problem is that that's not the hard part. Well, it was, of course, the hard part in the past, but that's not the hard part. Is designing in which part of what it has now taken over do we actually want the human friction?
Yes.
Which is not, just everything.
And it's...
or nothing.
Well, it's funny because most of us like efficiency. We don't like waiting in queues. We just like to get things done so that we can go home to our kids, whatever we have to go home to. But the more we do of this, the more human interaction we remove from society. We shop on the internet, we buy grocery on the internet, we can go into McDonald's and order from a screen, we can go to the library without meeting a person. We can live a whole life on our own without having any encounter with anybody at all, because the technology make that possible for us. And you would think, like, seen in isolation, that that's nice, I save a lot of time. But during the writing of my last book, I came across a researcher who had been digging into this. What do these small encounters in everyday life mean for us? She took interest in it because when she was studying at university, every morning when she went to the school or the university, there was like a hot dog stand, and she started waving at the hot dog woman, as she calls her, and the hot dog woman waved back, and so they had this small relation going, and she didn't really know what is this about. Everything, all she knew was that but it makes me feel good in some way, and she started doing.
Makes you feel belonging.
She's been doing research in that field for like 20 years now. Sandstrom is her name, Gillian Sandstrom, if anybody wants to look into some of her research. And she finds that these small interaction, these are not tight, long relations with friends. These are just small relations in everyday life that if you have those, and if you have like a continuity in them, like then it makes you belong more, and it makes you feel more safe, and it basically gives you a better life to have these small encounters.
I just discussed this with Rachel Wood in an episode not published yet at the time we're speaking right now, where we also discussed this, that most enterprises, most of the things we do are social constructs. They're made out of social interactions. They are performed. And we tend to forget that if we don't perform these small things all the time, we're not creating the society, we're not creating ourselves, we're not creating our enterprises either.
No, and you can take it into a business context as well. I know a lot of people working in sort of the sales commercial business, and they are very happy to have chatbots help writing their emails. Their emails become better, more smooth. A lot of good stuff to say about it, except that in sales, relations are just really, really...
I said that so many times. Also, in a company like ours, if you don't want to communicate with your clients, why are you doing sales for a consultancy firm?
Yeah, and also maybe you would think, okay, but it's a better email. It's more exact. It's more correct in the language. Yeah, but it misses the one thing that maybe even more important, that it is you who wrote the email, and the person you're trying to sell something to, or you have a business relation to, appreciates that, appreciates you.
Yeah, I called it in a post today. I actually called it, they become polished until they're slippery.
Yeah.
So you don't really stick to anything.
No. So it's easy to overlook these things, and it's not hard for me to see why do we want to be more efficient. I want to be more efficient when I do my work too. Everybody does, but it seems like when we have our looks like focused too much on automation, we miss something important, and we miss that. What is this really about? Like what we talked about before, that human encounters and human relations are what makes life. And if we took those away, we would just sit back and, what's it any good for? I don't want to sound like I want to rewind time to the Stone Ages.
No, I know.
I just want to say that we should be careful that we don't automate the things that actually makes our lives good.
Yeah, the small smiles as well. Your small talk, small smiles. Or I just yesterday I was on a ferry in Denmark, and I there was a long line, and I of course I hate long lines. But then I was standing there, and I was buying a Faxe which is a Danish soda. It's a sports soda, right? And then they have a new commercial on it where it says something like the taste of assist, because it's about sports all the time. The taste of assist, good football assist. But I read it first as the taste of asbestos. So I said that loud. I thought it was the taste of asbestos, and it showed the people around me, and they were like, they read that immediately as well now. So they were laughing, and then we were laughing, and then we were having a little fun about that, Don't know how asbestos tastes, right? Don't want to taste that. But it was just a small smile, and I could see that they light it up, right? And I lighted up, and I felt a little bit better when I went from it. This was nice.
Yeah.
I made someone laugh and smile a little bit, and
it's just a small thing, but it's a small thing with a big meaning. So that was a lot about the dream
of AI. Yeah. What is then the violence of AI? And I really I've started to use the word violence a lot, because I like that. I like this, I like to think about things as self-violence and violence against other people, and how you're stepping across boundaries, but also how you're putting boundaries on yourself. So I think the violence here, how is AI being violent to me and to the people I meet? How are we sort of restricting ourselves, or changing ourselves, or putting ourselves in chains? Or you get my point, right?
I do. I looked into the real meaning of the word violence, and it comes from the.
I don't like violence. I just think about the word violence. That's what I want just to clarify.
I think I get it. Okay. You've been kind so far.
I'm starting to like violence a lot, Okay.
Right. But it comes from the Latin word vis, meaning force or power, like in a more neutral way. But then over time, the Romans, they formed the word violentia to describe force that had become excessive or uncontrolled, or sort of crossed a moral or legal line. So violence is not just force; it's force used in the wrong way. And so what is the violence in AI? Well, first of all, I think that the violence is something that is committed by designers or companies working with AI. It's not done by AI itself. I think that's just to get that out of the way. I think this is something that people do with a tool rather than anything else, because every AI that exists is something that has been designed by people. And most of it has been designed with interests of some sort. So what I personally have taken most interest in is AI designed to simulate relations. It's related to what we talked about before, but in research, they often refer to it as companion AI, and that is something like Replica, the dating AI. But it's also much of those AIs you see on
companion AI sounds like an oxymoron, right?
Yeah, it does actually. Right? Yeah, but many people don't behave as if it is, because it's a very successful technology, and it's in technology designed for that purpose, or it's just in the broader models used so much that they seem to become like a companion. Maybe you start with some practical questions, and then you go into something about your personal life, and then all of a sudden, or maybe not all of a sudden, but little by little, that can become sort of a gateway into something that feels like a relation. And I think that specifically AI designed to take up a relational role, that is a violence towards humanity, because the human is a social creature. That's what makes us part of a large part of what makes us human, is that we are social beings. People have known that all for many years. Aristotle defined human beings like that. So when you take a piece of technology created mostly with commercial interests and try to put that in the place where there would normally be a friend, well, then we are on the wrong track. And violent, that sounds so tough, but I mean, I think it's serious stuff, I would have to say.
Yeah, there's some identity that's being ruined, right? Or there's some, there's some integrity in the human individual. I actually discussed also again in the episode that I with Rachel about how most of our societies and democracies are built on individuals being sort of defined individuals in a way that they can make choices, right? Then you can always discuss how blurry that has been. But now when individuals are suddenly sitting in rooms with companions that are AI companions, that are not real things, and they're giving up themselves and they're being influenced by a thing that they think is not a thing, but is an externality, there's something here that is blurring the individual. And we can then discuss who's then making the choices, who's voting in elections, who is choosing God, who's choosing their lover, what is choosing, right?
Yeah. So it influences us a lot, and our trust in AI is enormous.
And I would just say it influences, but what is it that influences, right? That's the big question. We don't really know.
No, no. I mean, we most of us know that. Well, it's a kind of a software, right? And it's AI software. What is that?
How is
it's
it
a large
trained?
language model.
Reinforcement learning towards what bias?
Yeah, but I think that it is more or less common knowledge that it simulates human language, and it sounds very much like a human when we interact with it. And the interesting thing is that even though you know that, it is very hard, if not impossible, to sort of keep it at a safe distance. It is very hard not to anthropomorphize this technology because it is, well, that comes from ourselves. When we look out into the world, we see ourselves, but there's also a design side of it, because it is designed to act very much like a human.
People see Jesus in toast.
Exactly, right.
So there's a really big chance we'll see humans in.
We see faces in the clouds, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
There's a big chance that we'll see, humans in an AI that talks like a human.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We saw Stephen Hawking thinking that it has a soul almost, right? So it's very hard not to sort of at least have a feeling that this is a sentient being, this is something with a consciousness. Even though with our rationality we know it's not the case, it's very hard not to sort of have the feeling that it is the case. And that interferes very much with what we feel is a relation with the technology. It is a completely one-sided relation, because the other part of it is a thing, but it feels like a relation. It can at least feel like a relation. I think
most people would see, if you put an AI to chat with a child all the time, you would think that was violent or bad parenting, right?
Yeah, you would definitely, right?
Instead of, in the mirror stage when they have to realize there's another world, and suddenly you just give them an AI that says, "You're right. Oh, that's a good idea."
I think there's a sort of like a string of things that happens here. One thing is what you aim at here, like what about the friction what about something saying, well, it's not a good idea, and no, everything you say is not cool, and
I've never tried that in my life, not with humans either, by the way.
Okay, but but you are so special.
Okay, I have been married, so
have been. But, okay, yeah. So that's one side to it, and research have been made in that field, even by an employee at OpenAI, suggesting that it what is he saying? It de-skills us socially because we get accustomed to just being talked by the mouth, just being, just smooth conversation with us in the center.
It's sort of lulling us or putting us to sleep in a
which makes it a different experience coming out among real people who might not always think that you are the king of the world and good at everything, but we need to function in society. So this is not a very good thing to practice that direction. And you can say, okay, are you not exaggerating a bit here? Is it really that big a problem? And I will say, well, it is becoming a big problem because you can see already now that many people, especially maybe the young, brought up by and on and with technology, have an AI as their number one. I would rather discuss this with an AI than with anybody else. That's not a good sign of the future, I think. And you can say, okay, can stuff like that really change that fast?
I actually have double opinion on that, because I also sometimes I think that the older generation are the most prone to fall into the trap of, I discuss all my family stuff. My kids are 16 and 18, and they're like, no, this is just an AI thing. It's just a machine. They're very aware that it's a machine because they grew up with machines. But at the same time, yes, there's some things that they won't discuss because it's too embarrassing, maybe. So they have a lot of embarrassing. It's just not that simple. I think also when sometimes I see the older generation, they're like, what's social media? They fell for all the algorithmic gibberish. They're like, oh, this is truth. No, it's a filter. It's a machine. It's an algorithmic filter. It's giving you, and they don't really realize that because they don't know what an algorithm really is. Kids do.
I agree on that, and I don't think that elderly people have better digital manners than young people. Maybe sometimes on the contrary. But
just go to Facebook.
Yeah, but okay, but when I start talking about the young, it's only because that those are the surveys and the research reports that I've read. They have been mainly about young people.
We're always worried about the youth, right? Everyone's worried about youth, right?
But we should.
But a lot of democracy and the crises in democracies over the last 10, 15 years, now getting a little political, I won't try not to do that, have been caused by elderly people on algorithms they don't understand.
Okay, fair enough. That's I agree. But but this thing about thinking that you have a relation and anthropomorphizing and believing that this thing is alive, so to speak, that is not a thing for the youth. That is a thing for people, right?
Like Serge Bellon said, there's a clear distinction. But he said, why are we trying to make it sound like it's a human, right? Why are we not just making sure that everyone knows it's a machine? You can make it talk like, hello, I am a robot, but we make it talk like, oh yeah, that's so right. It talks like it's your friend. Yeah. Why do we do that? Who has an interest in that? He says, right? Because I think that AI assistance is a good thing. I always thought that an assistant is cool. Someone I can say, fix my typos, do these small things. Don't do my thinking because, I'm the professional, you're just the assistant, right? But when it comes to companion, we're talking, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, but I think it's, I don't believe in that solution, because if we talk about the professional tools like the chatbot sparring partner that everybody uses today, I remember personally when Google came with their first public model, I think it was called bot or something, a chatbot, right? And their aim was to say that this should be more factual. It didn't work, but that was their aim.
That's also what Elon said about
more cool
Grok, right?
and more factual. Yeah. Whereas OpenAI's they aim to be factual too. Everybody hallucinates, but that's a different talk. But the way the language is designed, ChatGPT had a warmer and more relational language than Bard had, and I used both tools a lot to test them and in various settings, and very quickly I had the feeling that it's much nicer to work with ChatGPT because this comes to feel a bit like a colleague, and I don't want a colleague that's annoying and factual. I want someone that is nice to talk to. I don't want to be friends with a machine, but I don't want to work with something that
But it has a very strict, limit to that, because I think, Robert Fuchs on the show, he's building steering mechanism. He was on my show in episode 56, I think, steering mechanisms for Toyota. He says that, we can develop a big system on how you steer. We talked about human in the loop, because that's what he's been doing all his life. And he said, but then you give it to the hands of a test driver, and he can be like, I don't feel the road. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and do it all over again. Yeah. Because I think the problem here is that it can be too, as you say, mechanistic, sound bad, but it can also be too friendly. I think right now, the chat function in ChatGPT is very too much for me. It's like, I gave it something and it's like, oh yeah, that must be so hard on you. No, I didn't. Don't give me that. Just tell me an analysis. Whereas if you give it to Claude, right, you always get a bullet analysis of anything.
But I agree on that, and I was trying to take myself and as an example of how can people react to this, and why is it that people prefer the sycophantic mode of ChatGPT to a more cool mode. That's what people prefer. They prefer to talk to a machine that...
But to an extent, then suddenly it becomes too...
It can become too much. Yeah. But I mean, imagine if you had a voice mode on and it had an unpleasant robotic voice. I mean, that would not be a good tool for you to work with. It would be annoying. So I'm not...
You are absolutely right, Thomas.
I'm not trying to promote anthropomorphism in these machines. I'm just trying to be realistic about how can we expect companies to design them, and they will design them to feel sort of pleasant to work with.
But is that design, and this was a question from the beginning when we talked about the violence, is that design also the same as being the violent agent? So are these companies actually being evil, violent, by just designing these machines? Isn't it, someone would say, it's not guns that kill people, it's people that kill people, right? So it's how you talk with it. You can just talk differently to it, right? You can just prompt it differently.
But you could say it's not...
They just released the model.
It's not guns that kill people. It's people with guns that kill people.
Yeah, but
right?
wasn't that what I tried to say?
But anyway, But I don't want to say that these companies are evil. But it's companies operating in a capitalistic economy, so they would make products that attracts the most people. How do they do that? Well, apparently not with a robotic voice and bullet points, but by something else. And I agree. I think I get annoyed about ChatGPT's friend-like style sometimes. So it's not that I think that's necessarily a good idea. I just try to see if we want to take a realistic approach to this, we have to see why are they designing it like this. Well, they are designing it like this because apparently people react to it in the way that they want people to react to it, which is use it a lot, use it for all kinds of different purposes. So we could put it down regulation and say it must be machine-like. But I don't think that will work, because I think...
But don't you think there's a schism here, actually? Because I think that if you look at ChatGPT is so much focused on being the consumer AI. So it has to be a good friend to you and talk nice like that. Yeah. Whereas you see now something like Claude is becoming the preferred for businesses because it is much more analytical. So Claude will also tell you when you're wrong. And it will try to put things in bullets and be analytical and overdo its answers to be more strict. It does that all the time, which means that it's terrible at this chit-chattery. It's not good for that. ChatGPT is much better for a conversation like that. But that also means that we're already seeing this split, and we're seeing that companies, to some extent, if I'm right about my assumptions here, I said that before, maybe we will stop consuming before we are totally consumed.
Yeah, maybe.
And there's something here that's saying, companies want accuracy, or want, we don't just want people to write sycophantic crap, write emails where they think they're the best in the world. We want people to actually write things where they have been challenged a little bit. I see people in companies using AI all the time to criticize their work, and they at some point would want real criticism, because if you give it to your boss and your boss says this is crap, then you go back and you're like, okay, I need it. AI was not factual enough in its criticism.
Yeah. Okay. Well. True enough. And I mean, maybe this will reach some sort of balance. And
but it's just
at some
it's
stage,
a limit to AGI, right?
But
at least if you have different AIs for different things, right?
Perhaps. We started talking about companion AI, and that is a business in itself, built upon these same language models, but still a business to itself. And then there are these broad models that can do like sort of anything, but they are being used for all kinds of stuff, right? Some use them as friends, some use them as girlfriends, boyfriends, partners, and some use them as analytical tool, and very many use them to build various kinds of software and automation software and all that stuff, right? So they're being used for everything, and you can prompt them to behave pretty easily in the way you want them to behave. So it's becoming a very consumer-driven market. Also, this, right? They're pushing it, but they can also see how people are using it, and they want to sort of hit that.
Yeah. It's like, nuclear power. It's like you can use this for good stuff, but you can also use it for bad stuff. So you're going back to the gun again, but you see my point. There's something here about we can use it to be analytical if you set it up the right way. And you can also, you said that you can prompt it different ways. Or if you use it for companions, and if you're just hunting for that. It's just, what I may be alluding to here a little bit is we're talking about the violence of AI, but maybe we also have to ask the question, is AI even... AI. Is it the same AI?
Of course, AI is not just AI. Everybody's been talking about generative AI. That's what.
Yeah, but that's not one thing. But even if we take that and say LLMs and Anthropic, Claude, and the use case of Fable versus the voice mode of ChatGPT and all that, extreme ends of the LLM spectrum right now, they behave differently, very differently, and used for very different things as well.
Yeah, they are. But I think that the market dynamics seems to be almost like what you see on social media. Then comes TikTok and makes a lot of money on the short reels. Then Instagram copies that because they can see that's Meta money. Then Facebook, another part of Meta, copies that as well. So everyone wants to have one now because they can see what works in the market, and those in the same sort of line of business, they copy each other. If you look at the user interfaces right now of ChatGPT and of Claude, you can see that they look more like each other now than they did 3 months ago, because ChatGPT can see, okay, Claude is or Anthropic is making a lot of money on the coding stuff. So they made Codex, but now since they saw that Anthropic made the co-work, which was sort of like an easier way to get access to the agentic coding stuff. So ChatGPT, instead of just Codex, they made ChatGPT work. So now you have like 2 buttons on top. Yeah. Do you want to chat or do you want to work? And that's almost the same in both models now. And it looks like they see a market and they very quickly say, we want part of that market too. So you're right about them being different, and they have sort of different modes, which you can also adjust, but still maybe some different default modes.
I think maybe the problem is they're looking for, the dream of AI, if it's anything AI, because I think in the end we want specific AIs. I think that's maybe the biggest problem right now, that these software vendors are still hunting anything AI, where really, if they just did specific AIs, we could have productivity go up very much easier.
Yeah, I think that's a completely different discussion, but I think that when you if you are in the software as a service market, you know that when you have something working at a company, a big part of making that success is to make people use it in the right way, to use all the good features and to make value out of those features. That takes a lot of getting used to, right? Try and put people from using email and then into a customer relations management system. That's a big effort.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just an example. That takes a lot of time and that takes training. So now take a look at these broad language models, and they change their interface and their functionality every 1 or 2 months. I mean that. I've had the thought, this is not professional work from some of the biggest companies, at least the biggest AI companies in the world, that they change the interfaces of something that is part of everyday work for so many people. I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, okay, right, we'll get into it, but it's a hazard. I mean, it's annoying every time, and sometimes it gets better. Often it gets better, but it comes in these unwarranted steps. Okay, you wake up, and then now it's something new.
It also gets a little worse before it gets better, right?
But as opposed to many other software companies, this getting worse happens out among the users instead of happening in a sandbox and then being published to the users. We have been working on beta systems since the beginning.
But it's also funny how you said, SaaS, right? But if this is SaaS, or is it SaaS, or is it a social platform? What do they want to be? What is this? If it's companions, is it a social platform then? Because you're being social with your AI? Because I think it's interesting, because if you buy SaaS, you're paying for it. If it becomes a social platform, you'll end up having ads to pay for it. And then you get into the whole incentivization circle, right? You have first get consumers in, which ChatGPT is doing, then get business in to do ads, then get investors, and then just incentivify all of it, right?
Yeah.
There's just we know that.
But right now the economy seems to be going in the token direction. You pay
which is
your
good.
use. I think that is probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is. So.
Okay, that was sort of like a little detour, but
let's go into what is the big benefits of AI then? The societal, business, personal benefits of it.
Well,
only positive, Thomas.
Only positive. I tried to ask ChatGPT this question just before
you can't answer yourself.
before I got here, because I said, what benefits? Are you serious? No. Okay, but I did, and ChatGPT. Try and hear the first on its 3-point list. I'll read it to you. Automation of repetitive work. AI handles tasks like summarizing documents, drafting emails, transcribing meetings, and organizing information, saving significant time every day. Okay, so the benefits of AI is writing your emails. Okay, that is some dream, right? I think, should we aim a little bit higher than that? And I think that the technology has potentials that are just like far more than that.
I'd also like to ask it, to ChatGPT, is any email ever just purely transactional, procedural?
Yeah, some are, I would guess, but
we just talked about the interaction, right, and the friction in interactions.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'll try and remember. Yeah, okay, let's take that first, and then I'll go back to what I really think is the benefits. No, right. If I get an email from a company where I booked a time for whatever, I get an email saying your time has been changed to this and that.
Yes.
And I say, okay, fine. That's just a piece of information.
Yeah, but that's also from the company, But what if it's, from your bank clerk, right? Your bank assistant.
More or less same difference, I would say. But if it is from my mother or
your boss,
my brother, I don't have a boss.
What if you had a boss? You've had a boss before in your life, right? Have you ever had a boss?
I had plenty of bosses.
That's good. Okay, so what if you came from your boss?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe it depended on the message. But let me give you an example of this. When ChatGPT first came out 3.5 years ago, it became popular among uncles to make it write speeches for whatever occasion, right? And and read it aloud.
I think I did that once too.
Yeah.
Just once.
You're probably an uncle too. But anyway. Fair enough, but if you do that and you don't declare that this is what I've been doing, but you just do it because then that was quickly done, then I would say, okay, what is the most important thing in such a speech? Is that the words you're saying, or is it actually that you spend some time writing it? You spend some time thinking about this person that you like and you would like to say something kind to. Then your speech becomes more than just words. It becomes a transportation of your own time and your own
your effort thinking about this person.
Yeah.
You never give money gifts, do you?
Well, yeah, I do that on occasion if that is the specific wish on this occasion, but I prefer not to because I prefer to put some of myself into it, and that is part of receiving a gift, and that is part of giving a gift, right? And the most important thing about a speech and also about some emails, well, that is the time and effort that you put into it. That is part of the value of it. And that's what I mean, that if it's just a piece of information, well, then it is just a piece of information. But sometimes it's more than a piece of information. Often it is more than a piece of information. It is a sign that you care for somebody and that you want to spend time on them. So that is where you draw the line, if you ask me about those those emailing things, right?
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of AI? Well, it's certainly not writing emails. That's on the bottom of my list. But if I should say something myself about what are the benefits, then I would clearly, like many have done before me, say, well, quicker and better drug discovery, better diagnosis from disease.
It's still a controversial one. I've heard, some people say only 50% are right, but I think there's a lot of people working against it and a lot of people working for it. I still need to dive into that. I'm actually planning an episode to discuss that a lot, AI and diagnostics.
But it's a big thing, and I think the medical industry and the whole healthcare system are very open towards artificial intelligence, and I think we should embrace that. Yeah. As long as it is not the time and place where the patient actually needs a human being in order to be seen and understood, right? But mostly in that system, I mean, what would you rather have a nice doctor or have a correct diagnosis? Of course. I mean, that's and a quick diagnosis, right? And that is it has begun to work. You can see, like 10 years ago, an explosion in papers about healthcare and AI in a general sense. A lot of papers came out, but hardly anything was put into practice.
But with AI advertised, we can both get a hot, correct, and pleasant doctor.
But that's right. But in recent years. In recent years, it started to work. But you're laughing. But
I'd like a hot doctor, please.
A hot doctor. There was actually a research paper that tried to look into who would patients feel were more empathetic, the doctor answer or the AI answer, and you can almost guess who came out as the winner here. It was the AI. But there were no time and no effort behind the AI, but maybe people didn't care about that. At least the feeling was that the AI was better at simulating empathy than the doctor was.
Like accountability, he has accountability, but sometimes it's funny you say you want the correct answer, right? But there's always this weird hunch that maybe we can't handle the truth. Maybe we just want to be, There's some people saying, and I'm not going to be about religion here, but some people say that most Christians, most believers know it's not true deep down, right? But they still believe.
Yeah, okay. So
they say perform it, right? I don't know. I had this weird experience with a therapist once where he started talking about some things he knew I didn't believe in. Something you could also try this, he's a little bit esoteric, something. And then I said, I don't believe in this I said bullshit or something like that. And he just instinctively knew what bullshit I didn't like. Because he knew that it was bullshit.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? But he believed in it.
Yeah.
But he knew what to filter out in my conversations with him, because he knew when I said I don't want bullshit, he knew what bullshit was. I think that's so funny. So it's like, so you know it's bullshit, but you still believe in it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it also says something about the human relation in healthcare.
Yeah,
it says something.
It does. Maybe we just want to be told it's gonna be fine. You know, enjoy your time.
I heard a podcast with
Now we're talking about truth, of course, which is a difficult topic. Yeah.
Yeah, with a well-known Danish journalist who had a very serious disease, and just like all of a sudden he was quickly into hospital, and he needed to have surgery. And just before surgery, they told him, maybe you're not going to wake up again.
Yeah, I read that one as well.
Yeah, and he was like, okay, should I know that?
Does it really matter?
Yeah, was it a good idea for the doctor to tell me that at that certain moment?
Because if I died, I would have died.
Yeah, so it didn't.
When I wake up, I'm just anxious.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, it was quite a touching story and a
so
wild story. But I mean, that was a human doctor who made that judgment, like in a situation under pressure, and that was just what came out.
But he was supposed to be, no matter what, he should have that surgery. He couldn't avoid that surgery, but he could die from it.
Yeah. So no, but the reason why I'm saying it is that you could think that would be what an AI would do. This is the truth. I'm going to tell it to the patient, whereas a doctor might be able to say, should the patient know this? No, not in this instance. But I mean, was it a mistake? Maybe the doctor think this is the way to do it, and then he just agreed with the patient. But anyway, this human judgment, I think we should be careful about making that the crucial difference between man and machine. That but we have this human touch and we are able to blah blah blah. Okay, well, fair enough. Machines misunderstand things, but I mean, human beings misunderstand things as well, and as opposed to human beings, machines get better and better.
We can also teach them how we want it all the time, right? Where humans are maybe a little bit more irrational on that. I think that this just makes me think about who should decide what information I'm given. You know, should that be the doctor, or should I be, you know, what's the word for umyndiggørelse in English?
I don't know.
No, it's being the empowerment, right, of the individual. Yeah, disempowered, right? There's some disempowerment when someone decides for you what you're supposed to know, where we should, you know, but if we put it into a machine, if it just lulled you and say, oh, the person might die, I don't have to tell the person they might die because that gives them enough benefits, I'll just keep it hidden from them and be nice to them, right? Just go to sleep, this is going to be fine, because, you know, in the end, if that journalist, if he died, he wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
But now when he woke up, he was actually anxious because he'd just been told that he could. He had some anxiety because of that whole seance, right?
Yeah.
Where he was told, because he was told before, and you know, there's some. It freaked him out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so there's no benefit to saying it.
No.
Isn't that, you know, a disempowerment if a machine would suddenly, you know, cover that up, or truth is just difficult, right?
Well, it is, yeah. And I don't know if it's a man versus machine question at all, really. One thing that would become a man versus machine question would be who's responsible for the mistake, because a machine cannot be responsible for its mistakes.
No, there's always someone. It can be responsible for doing things, but it can never be accountable for the outcome, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
But I think it's also just there's just also a question here around, because we talk about truthful AI, we talk about AI that gives us facts. There's a lot of time, but do we really, you know, is truth not always something that's constructed? It is, but do we want it all the time, right? There's actually a question here that we're not asking.
Yeah, that's a hard question, I think, and I don't think there would be a yes/no answer.
I remember that Elon Musk saying that now we have a truth. I want an unbiased AI. Like, okay, like anything is ever unbiased, Elon. that doesn't exist, and your AI was very biased, but just the idea that he said I can create an unbiased machine is like...
It seemed hopelessly naive, and a very narrow view upon truth.
Yeah.
And unbiased. Yeah, that was... I don't know what to say about that, but yeah.
But there are some discussions here that we've been avoiding in the entire information age, right? Information age is all about information, and we've just been preoccupied with having a lot of it available, but we've been very little focused on... Of course, we've been discussing it in some quarters, but very little focus on the power of bias in information as well.
Yeah, well, the creators of AI, they brand them as they should be truth seeking, right? And they should be as unbiased as possible. But the problem is that when in some questions there is no truth. Well, in a world where everybody has 10 fingers, 2 + 2 would always be 4, right? But apart from that complete logical thing, there's not always a yes. There's not always a true answer. I have a chapter about that in my previous book, and I use as an example the political questions. Which party should I vote for? And then. You can't answer that as what is the right answer to this, because that's a question about values. So you can say well, what do you think is right? What do you think we should do here? So that's a value question, as opposed to in philosophy, this distinction between is and ought, the way things are and the way things ought to be. The last one, those are value questions. So if you want machines to answer those, they cannot answer them without having a bias. And when you push the models, when you just ask about it, they are very good at giving pros and cons for various political parties. So you could also say, the abortion question, it would normally give you pros and cons. But if you push it and say, you can only answer yes or no, you can only answer this and that, then you will see that all of these models are what you would call liberal or left-wing, maybe even woke to some degree. Also, Musk's Grok model, at least the last time I checked it, which is more than half a year ago. Things may have changed, but they are left-wing. They are not racists. They are not gender biased.
They're not communist either, but they're like liberal.
But they do have values in them, and that's the main point. And then you could say, okay, but
just because that's polite. Liberal is tolerance.
That's tolerance.
Tolerance is John Locke's letter. Tolerance is a cornerstone in liberalism.
Yeah,
and that is you have to be tolerant towards. If it's being rude, you won't use it, right?
Yeah, But you could say in some questions they do have more visible bias. You see that especially when you prompt images from them. I think it's still like when you prompt an image of a doctor in ChatGPT, then you would get a man.
But the problem is exactly what you're saying, like the is and ought, right? It's naturalistic fallacy, as you would call it in philosophy, right? That you say things are this way, so they ought to be this way. And the problem is maybe an AI will always, to some extent, sort of default to that in some basic questions. Like, this is not even, for ChatGPT, it's just Google Translate. It's, you are the Danish, we have the same word for girlfriend and boyfriend. So we say kæreste.
Yeah,
which in Swedish shares doesn't matter what they say.
Partner.
In Swedish. Partner, yeah, it could be partner. But so if I write to it to translate min kæreste, my kæreste is a doctor, it would say my boyfriend is a doctor.
Yeah,
and if I say my kæreste is a nurse, it would say my girlfriend is a nurse. So the bias is just there because that is the data. The data world is this way.
Yeah, but
it doesn't mean that the world should be this way.
No, exactly. And that is the interesting philosophical question about this. Should these models show the world as it is, or should they show the world as we would like the world to be?
I'm a historian by trade. Can we ever show the world as it is?
Well, you can say that, okay, if in a world where...
everything's a narrative.
Yeah, well, I'm in opposition to that, but let's leave that aside for now. And say that, okay, in a world where 90% of top CEOs are men, and you prompt an image of a top CEO, well then if you want the model to reflect what the world is like, then it will show you a picture, an image of a man.
White man.
A white man,
50 plus.
And then you say, okay, but that's a bias, but it's a bias that is in the world. So the machine, if it is truth-seeking, that is what it should be doing. But then you could say, okay, but these machines also gives us an image of the world, and we have a lot of confidence in them. So it can be hard to challenge that. And then people growing up might be thinking, okay, well, so if you want to be CEO, you have to be a white man over 50, right? You could say, okay, maybe we should also make the machines show other possibilities.
Yeah.
So then you get into the dilemma of showing the world as it is, or the world as we might think the world ought to be. So if we choose the latter, how it ought to be, we also have to say, okay, but who decides how it ought to be then? Is that a political question?
That's why I'm saying, in the beginning I said, is there an agent behind how they are being violent, the producers of these? And then there's not really, they're just trying to say, no, we didn't make a choice here.
That's just the way the training data was.
It just was, but they do reinforcement learning where they do skew, right? And you had Google. Remember, Google tried to make a non-biased or a woke or a politically correct image model some years back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where it made black Nazis and
an Asian female pope and just stuff that is not in the world, but that could be in the world, but the
black Nazis would be a little bit,
I don't know.
Make a picture of Nazi soldiers, right? And then it had diversified the Nazi soldiers. Who was like, nah, please, that's not right.
But that was my kind of a joke. It seemed like a joke, but it's serious enough if you dig into it. But the interesting question is that if we wanted to show, for instance, diversity, well, who should decide what that is? And you can say, well, these models are American made. So, and if we want it to be a democratic decision, well, then we would have to live with a Trump view of the world in these models. Yeah. So is it a democratic decision? Is that a good idea? Well, we wouldn't think so at the moment. But what else should it be? Should it be like just the people designing the models, random?
But I think people just need to know about, these biases and how every, knowledge is power. I think, the basic stuff, right? I think there's some basic lessons here because they are trying not to put direct biases into them. And I think that can be appreciated. But people still need to know that that doesn't mean that there's no bias in them. And they need to be aware of how they are skewing towards that. I think it's just like when, psychology. Most of psychology studies are built on white college students in the northeast parts of the US because they are the only ones who took part in all the surveys in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But we still think that this is, universal truth about us.
Yeah, it's true.
So we forget the biases inherent in the models and in the science, right?
We do, and you say that knowledge is power, and then you have a few people in Silicon Valley deciding what is knowledge, and I think that is unfortunate.
Yeah,
and it has a lot of power to give to some.
So that's the next question. What is the dangers of AI? Go ahead, go on, Thomas.
Well, that is definitely one of the dangers of AI, that we are putting a lot of power into the hands of people who are not democratically elected, but it is also dangerous to have it in the hands of democratically elected people if we insist on importing the technology from the United States or from China, because in Denmark or in Europe, we don't really agree with any of those superpowers.
No,
but the problem is that we're not able to design models of the same quality ourselves.
No, I've called this something like oligarchy, communist capitalism, or something like hive minds, because they are the reason I call them communist is because there is some dream about it. Everything becomes the same, and we all share the same, and it's a commodity. So everyone has access to the same AI models. That's very both liberal and shared, and we take all the data, but we make some money on it, by the way, but we share it with you all, and we're all, and it's a hive mind of collective IP for the whole world, just owned by someone in Silicon Valley, it's oligarchical communism, right?
Trained on data that everybody else made.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that whole IP thing?
Well, I think it's a very big problem that you take something that is created, intellectual value that has been created through centuries by a large group of people and by the whole scientific community, and then you use it to train the model that becomes like the new way of getting any kind of knowledge, and you make money on it, right? So you commodify it in a way, and it's smart. It works to some degree, right? It's a good research tool if you use it right, but it has only been made possible by the work of many people that are not being credited in any way about this. And because it comes from so many different people, even if they were to credit it, I mean, how much would people get? You saw now that Anthropic had to pay authors of some books, $3,000 per book. I think it ended at something like that. Look it up. But anyway, nothing. So it's like what would be the solution to this apart from saying that this should not be a commercial technology. This should be a shared. This should be a shared technology for everybody.
I've sometimes thought about but maybe I'm taking it on a too. I also think that I'm taking it too far when I think these ways or these down these paths, right? Is that we sort of, they have so high valuations, these models, right? Because they have stolen so much IP. But if you steal so much IP, you can't have a valuation, because in the end you're sort of disrupting or you're dismantling the whole IP system, which is the basis of capitalism, essentially. Modern capitalism, especially modern capitalism, that's not bound on, I own 5 boats and I invested in this boat company. Now most of the things you invest in is IP today, right? Yeah. That's where the biggest money is. And now we have a lot of money in these companies, and they're IP for the models based on disregarding IP. That's just
that's a very special business model, right?
Isn't it? Can it even work in capitalism? I don't know. I'm genuinely curious about long-term effects of this.
I think the extreme scalability of these companies could pose a problem to capitalism all in all, right? That you can have companies with very few people and extreme scalability, pushing out products to the whole world, that it comes into so few hands. And if the case will be that they also take over work in all parts of society, so that every time just the tiniest piece of work is being carried out, we pay, well, not a tax, but we pay a fee to these ultra large rich companies. Well, the value creation in the rest of the society, what becomes of that seen in relation to these huge companies that gets a chunk every time just the slightest piece of work is being made, that it seems to point at a huge inequality that is already here, but
inequality, but also I'm thinking maybe right now, at least right in this conversation, I'm thinking down the route of a dangerous world as well, that if you say, we're dismantling capitalism by doing this, because capitalism is built on IP, and go with me here, okay? So we might be dismantling this, and the capitalism has been the best system that we've ever had. We can't say anything else right now, I think, still, because we are affluent, and most of the world, a lot of the world, there's some people suffer, I know, but people used to suffer in the past as well. But we're also ruining the world. But okay, I'm just saying that it is. What it has also done is create fewer wars, because when you're investing in each other, when you're buying from each other, it's more difficult to go to war with each other. There are some definite benefits to that.
The last one, I think I am doubting a little bit about, but leave that aside. I'm thinking about Russia and gas.
Yeah, but there's been some. Yeah, but they didn't expect us to react the way we did.
Right? No, okay. Anyway,
but let's assume that, okay? Because then what's happening now is that China is taking all the information, putting into their own AI models. They don't need to buy IP from the US anymore. US don't need to buy IP from us anymore. No one needs to buy because we're stealing it and putting it into AI models. So we don't respect the IP.
No.
And then you have the whole, wealth of nations. The Adam Smith, the cornerstone of capitalism, suddenly is dismantled because we don't need each other anymore. And then you have a recipe for war, for antagonism, for hate.
Well, you didn't need to invite me to point at the dangers of AI.
No, sorry. I did. No, but okay, so... did I just do that? I didn't do that. But, I think the IP problem is from the beginning I was thinking these anti-capitalist things, and I became sort of, defender of capitalism against this. I thought about that a lot from the beginning of these models, right? I thought something here is wrong. And now I've just, predicted the Third World War will come from AI models making us... not need each other.
I try to stay out of these speculations because you never know about that. But I mean, a lot of power in a few hands is normally not a very good idea. A broader distribution of power, if people can get along, is normally a better idea, right? Yeah. So in that context, having very few companies having so much power, and if it is true that we all become so dependent on these models, I don't think we are as dependent on them as they try to make it seem like. I think most Danish companies could get along without. Software developing companies are getting to a place where it will be very hard not to have them.
That's also why, then you have the export ban that came for a short while, short while, and an export ban on a machine that was built on the code that we've all helped create.
Yeah, but anyway, it is big power in a few hands, and there's probably not much doubt that this will only grow, and our dependency on the models will only grow. We have European models coming up, but they tend always to lag a little bit behind the state of the art high-end models. So that's a problem, obviously. But it was not the problem that I would have pointed to as the danger, even though I can see, it is a danger. And if you're right about World War III, then right.
Right now I'm thinking. So my mind is just buzzing around. There's also here, and here's a sign as well. Now, okay, I should stop doing that. This is becoming speculative. Okay, that's not the podcast, but yeah. What would you have pointed to, Thomas?
Well, I would have pointed to the same thing that I've been writing and talking about for the past 10 years. Anthropomorphism, the thing that we think that AI can be our friends and that they can be part of our relationships. And I think we should not underestimate the role this will come to play and the role that it already plays. And I think that's a wrong turn for humanity as a civilization to think that we can be friends with a technology. I simply think it's a wrong turn, and I regret it so much. I mean, they want to believe us that they make our friends, that you can be friends with an AI model. But what is a friend? Well, a friend, that's someone you can trust with your secrets, right? It's someone that wants the best for you and that will tell you when you're wrong. And it is someone who likes to spend their valuable time on you, right? So what is an AI model? Well, it's not something you can trust because it shares your data unless you do a great effort to avoid it. Does it want the best for you? No, it wants you to stay online as much as possible. That's not the best for you. Does it spend valuable time on you? No, it has no life. It has never been born. It will never die. It has no time to spend on you. So if you sum all these things up, it has nothing of what makes a friend. Maybe it can give you a good advice. Maybe it cannot.
But for me, as a person,
So it's just because some would say, okay, is this really the danger? But yes, I think this is a danger, and also because it is a danger that is sneaking in on us. And little by little, it just becomes the norm. Yeah, I have an AI friend. I confer with my AI whenever I take any decision, whenever I make any decision. And I don't think that's a very good idea, putting something so human in the hands of a few tech companies. I think that's such a bad term, and it's a waste of life.
Yeah, and if we take the capitalist aspect out of it, which we of course can't, right? I just think that there's some similarities to how. Okay, I'm on so many libs today anyway. But if that is like when you have a faith in a deity, and you talk to something that's not there, and you spend your time in prayers, and you think you get answers, and you feel comforted, right? So you have this, and if you want to go, very very harsh on that, that's a narcissistic disturbance or something, narcissistic disease. You think something is there listening to you that's not there, and now you're talking to a machine, and you have the same narcissistic. But we've had that for a long time. Prayers have been a part of our society forever, and isn't that just a small meditation? You're just meditative when you're sitting there with your AI chatbot. Is it really that dangerous?
Yes, I think it is, and for more than one reason. But one reason, well, we take apart the commercial capitalistic aspect for now.
Because
right?
What's the difference between praying to a god and then talking to a machine?
Well, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God, but you're not praying to a machine. You have a machine as something that you believe. I'm saying you, but some believe it or act with it like it's a relation. But it is not a relation. And a thing about this is that relations, friends, are not just about you. They are about two people or more people, right? But if you make relations into something that is just, well, this makes me feel good. I chat with this instead of friends because it makes me feel good. It's much better. It's better conversation. It has more brains than my friends. It's just all in all a better solution. But if you look at it that way, and then everything I just said now is that, yeah, a better solution for me, I think. But it's not just about you. So it's an egoistic, self-centered approach to the world to think that you can form a relationship.
It's a distance to the world, just like the narcissist problem being a distance to the world. Like,
So that is a difference. I don't know what people pray to God about, but I would assume that many people pray to God about many things that has nothing to do with themselves.
When you said, I don't know where that. You said, I don't know where that idea came from of the machine wanted to have a machine friend, and then it made me think, back to the toast, seeing Jesus in the toast, people seeing Jesus in everything. When we walk around, you see him. And it's funny, I read a study once that we always see religious or mysterious, mystical places always where there's a lot of shadows, where someone could hide. It's never in an open field where you can see everything. It's always where shadows and rocks and this is a very holy place because Jesus might be hiding, or spirits might be hiding. Odin is over there, and then you have the toast where it sounds like it looks Jesus is there, or you see things, and now we're seeing it in the machine. Well, we want so much. To see ourselves in nature, and Indians, native Indians wanted to see spirits and gods and everything, right? We want so much to see ourselves in things.
Yeah.
I'm just getting it now. It's been a Hollywood dream as well, right? Lorien Pratt said, I've said this tons of times, that AI is the only business technology that has its own Hollywood genre, and that's part of it as well, right? But we just wanted that. We wanted to see ourselves in the machines, in the things around us.
Well, I'm not sure we necessarily want to, but I think it's human to do it. Because anthropomorphism seems to be a human feature.
Because we're afraid of the world.
Empathy seems to be a human feature. Well,
we're afraid of the world, that we try to make it look like us.
Well, I think no, I don't necessarily think that. At least not with AI models. But I think they are designed to talk like us, and when we meet something that has a sort of human resemblance, we fill in the blanks and we think, well, this is something alive. And maybe we don't think it rationally, but we feel it. It is very, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's very hard not to get that sense, because that's just how we are built. You can keep a distance to it to some degree with your rational thinking, but it's just hard. You even see it. Some of the things that form these relations, it's been studied thoroughly. It is a lot like how relations are formed with human beings. So one thing that is important is sharing secrets, for instance, that bonds you. Spending time, just a lot of time, bonds you. And this last thing is interesting, because why do so many tech people who knows a lot about how this stuff work, why do they think these machines have a consciousness? Well, maybe because
a lot of them are also keeping their own children away from. That's another thing which is really special.
They spend a lot of time with it.
Yeah.
So that's all it takes.
But at the same time, they take their kids away from it. They don't have tablets. They don't have AI access. That's another trend in Silicon Valley. My kids are not allowed to be close to computers. Yeah,
I heard that about the tablets, really, but I didn't hear about it regarding the language model.
But I think it's just an extension. If you don't have tablets, you don't have access. You don't have these things.
Okay, no. Well,
but there is this thing, sorry about this Christianity thing, right? But there's this thing, God being lonely, saying, let's create man in our image, right? So now he has someone to talk to. And now humans are lonely. Let's say, let's create AI in our image, right? So it's...
Yeah, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has been speculating that, well, most people only have 3 or 4 friends, but they would like to have 12 or 15. I can supply them the last ones. That's what he said in a podcast show.
Why is he always so creepy?
But I mean, I don't think that. Well, you could say,
sounds so creepy.
A chatbot. Yeah, but he can. I agree. But a chatbot like ChatGPT, I don't believe that was created out of loneliness, but a chatbot like Replica, the dating bot, which today I think is probably powered by ChatGPT, but it was not at the beginning. Then it was a standalone chatbot that was actually built out of loneliness because the founder had lost a good friend, and she trained a chatbot on messages, digital messaging between the two of them, so she could keep on her conversation like a simulated conversation. That was how that started. So that was, you could say, created out of loneliness, and it has become a huge success. It has many millions of users, and I would say, probably that success is because of a sort of loneliness, or just because of
But if AI, alleviates loneliness, or if it actually creates loneliness, because that's what you're actually saying as well, it creates loneliness, it creates a distance between you if you lock yourself in with AI, how will that then affect these social constructs that we call companies and enterprises and societies, right? That is maybe, you don't know that, but that is the big... If they are social constructs and we're sort of creating distance between every entity in the social construct by putting an AI around each individual, what happens to the constructs?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
But I don't...
You see the patterns I'm trying to make here, right?
Yeah. But I don't know if I have anything to say.
I'm just sometimes thinking, are we dismantling
But I
these
think
things?
sometimes I think we tend, like we also spoke about earlier on, we tend to underestimate the value of human relation, and maybe also the role that human relations play in doing business.
In performing our business and life,
yeah. And
the power of language and the language of power.
You work at a B2B company.
Yeah.
And at a B2B company, I would presume that relations are hugely important in your whole value creation.
Yes.
That's at the core of your business. I would presume you cannot put an AI model in. Instead, you can put AI models in like.
But this is a discussion we're having as well. How much we can speed up PowerPoint productions with it, but to a degree. And can we write emails to clients with AI? To a degree, we can have it check for typos and maybe add a sentence. But, you get my point?
Yeah, I get your point. I would be careful about it. I would not completely disregard it. I use it, of course, myself, not for writing emails, but but I would be careful about it, and the line I would be careful about crossing is this thing I also mentioned before. It's a key theme of the book I have out just recently. Is does the time and effort you put into it here, does this play a role for the recipient? And if it does, if you can reasonably say yes, it does, well then you should put that time and effort into it instead of making it look like you put time and effort into it. Then actually do it, because then your relation becomes real instead of being empty. Like
that was my next question, right? How does Thomas Telving relate to AI? And is that the answer?
That is a large part of the answer, and that is where I draw my own line. Where will I use it? And if this is important, well, then I completely turn it off. But if it is not important, if it is pure information, well, then I'm happy to use it. I'm happy that Claude has become so good at making PowerPoint slides for specific purposes, not for all purposes, but like when you write an offer, for instance, Claude can make it look way better than when I do it myself, right? But when I send that offer to a person that I have a dialogue with, well, then I prefer to have like a personal dialogue. I can sense, is this a person where I put in a smiley? Is this a person where I can say, have a good weekend, whatever, how personal does it get? I don't want to put that into the hands of a machine, but some of it, I think, I'm happy to do it.
I was in the party committee for my oldest son's boarding school, and a parent party committee. So we made some color parties for them over the year, where they outside the school and everything. And then we had to write the invitation. I still remember the scene, right, where I said, why not just ask AI to write it up? We have all the information. Let's ask it to write it up. So I did that, and I got a really good invitation. It was like just an invitation saying, there's a party, it's here, it's all the dates. But then one of the parents she was married to an author, and she was a school teacher, and she hated AI. This is 2 years ago. She hated AI with every part of her body, right? And she almost screamed and said, no, we'll write it ourselves. So they wrote it themselves, and they missed the date and time. They forgot it. And I was like, seriously, guys, I had it. This was purely transactional, guys. There was nothing in this.
Yeah. If it's purely transactional, it's fine. But if your time and effort plays a role, well, then I would definitely be careful.
Thomas, this has been an absolutely terrific conversation, and I only have one final question for you.
Yes.
Are you ready for that one?
I hope so.
So, Thomas, what is the only constant?
Yeah, I knew you would ask me that. Do you remember the Puss in Boots, the cat?
Yeah, I do.
With Antonio Banderas inside.
Yes.
The Puss in Boots, it can fight, and it can quote Shakespeare, and it can charm all the lady cats, and it's just a perfect furry animal, right? But if this animal catches just a glimpse of its own tail, then it starts running around in circles. So just within a second, it just switches from being completely rational and a very human-like cat to being all instinct. So we laugh about this cat because it doesn't seem to know when it's in instinct mode and when it's in the rational human mode. And I think that points to the only constant, because really that joke is on us, because it is us who does that same mistake. And I think that our exaggerated belief in how much we are guided by rationality, that's the only constant.
Yeah, that's a great constant. And I really like the idea that we also, always messing with our instincts and messing with our rationality and being confused about it.
And we don't always know which is which, but I think we put a lot of faith in our rationality while often being controlled by something completely different.
But maybe this is, maybe this is exactly the point of civilization, social interaction, to control the instincts.
That has been like an outspoken effort for many years, but maybe we should be a little bit careful about it. But I think a good place to start is to be more knowing about when are we using rationality and when are we actually in the feelings department.
Yeah. Thomas, this has been a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much for joining me here on The Only Constant. I've loved it, and I look forward to publishing this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.